So that's me, test lead, tester, test architect, done a bit of product management, and worked mainly within the mobile and web context for 8 years now. A bit of test, because I don't know how many of you are working within the software development area, or if you work within some other area with product management. So I will briefly discuss a bit about test. We have a quote here: software testing is an investigation conducted to provide stakeholders with information about the quality of the product or service under test. So I come from a test perspective, and that is my view on the development process and the requirements. This quote here is from a guy called Kem Kano. He's a software testing guru. He wrote a book that still is considered to be a good book within software testing called Testing Computer Software. He did that in 1987. And this quote is actually from a newer book called Exploratory Testing, I think. And I think there are some really interesting word here is talking about quality and quality of software. And I will go into that part later on. Some of you here probably work with requirements within software development. I will not probably not have any large news, or I will kick in some open doors, and I will maybe discuss something you already have discovered. Testers are not always first to discover anything or everything. So. Test fundamentals. When you come from a software testing community, and you usually have different schools of software testing, you can apply to the context-driven and exploratory testing group, and you can go with the more requirement-based and scripted, automated test community. Or you don't believe in software testing at all, I don't know. But there are a couple of fundamentals that no one really argues. And we have, you can't test everything. That is more or less a principle that everyone can agree on. Also, the earlier you discover a problem, the cheaper it is to fix it. Test early. I think those can be agreed on, those two principles. And these are not news. I mean, test early, and concepts like that was discussed around extreme programming and early on that. But this part here, test early, will be alongside with the rest of my presentation here. If you have any questions, of course, just stop me. I usually talk a bit fast, so but say stop, and I will stop. And we will have a brief discussion later on also. So test early. What do I mean by test early? Well, with early, I don't mean sprint 1 in your software development phase. I mean earlier than that. Start early. Introduce testers to the process. It doesn't have to be a bit about writing tests or doing tests or executing tests. Of course, have it as a proactive activity instead of reactive. And introduce testing requirement work. It's not something you do in development phase. It's something that you should do throughout the project. And these are just my definitions of test early. So we have some testers challenges here. Some come from the project management, some come from the stakeholders, and some come from the team itself. Most of these, or some of these, are related to requirement handling and requirement management. So find all the bugs. That is usually the best thing. Then the software will be of very good quality. Understand the customer, the platform, the developer. What do they think? Right? Report quality status. That is a bit of what Kem Kaner said in the beginning. Delays, of course, that is a challenge. Testers is the last outpost here, so it's always coming with bad news and presenting some new bugs at the very, very end of the phase. And have you tested all the requirements? I don't know, maybe. So requirements then. I use the word requirements. If you work in software development, then you have Scrum and we have Agile, and there's a lot of other concepts, and you have user stories, etc. But more or less, every product that you develop will have some kind of requirement somewhere. Even if it's not written or outspoken, someone will have a requirement on the product that it is supposed to work in some way. So, a nice quote here. And this is a quote from a colleague of mine, also a tester. When I asked him about doing this presentation the first time around, and I asked him, would you like to do a presentation with me for some BA, business analysts, primarily? So this is what I got from him. So why is that then? So some of the background to his outburst. Unclear requirements. When he thinks requirement, he thinks they're unclear. They're vague. Too little detail. Unfinished requirements. Non-testable requirements. And contradicting requirements. It will oppose a design rule or other related functionality. So this makes it quite obvious to not think as requirement as a long list of features, but yeah, it will become a large problem for the entire project if the requirements are not clear. And as a tester, you often will be accounted for in the end to meet requirement, or do we meet the requirement? Is the quality good enough? Developers often have a bit of a freedom in the development phase to, if there's a button to be implemented, they can implement it, and it looks good. And when we should test the button to see if it actually, should it actually be positioned in the bottom or in the top, or where should it be? It's there, I see it, but a bit of a more feeling to investigate for the testers. So it's of course a problem for the entire team, but often accountable for testing. So what about Agile then? We don't have to do requirements. We have Scrum and we have user stories, and we would do the development along the way, and we have a demo that will accept the implementation and so on. But a problem that I've seen often is that we often have a conflict with a agile working way and a non-agile working way from different parts of the of all the stakeholders, because so when we're going to the demo, have you tested all requirements? How is the quality? Can you report the way the management wants you to report? Is the management working agile, or are they still looking at the requirement coverage or the test coverage, for instance? So there's a bit of conflict here in agile as well, or agile working ways. Often we have non-functional requirements, for instance, that maybe are not covered that good in user stories. Fast projects start before you have done the requirements. You need to get up and running. Please start building something and present what you have, and that is the agile way. Of course, you can sit down and say, okay, wait, stop. Let us analyze the requirements. Let us have a look at it. Let us see if it's good enough. But that costs money and it costs time. So that is also a bit of a stall here. And what we've also seen is you have immature it's a word, but non-tech companies that want tech solutions, and often are being somewhere forced into an agile way of working also. So you have to enforce the product owner role on someone, for instance, that you expect the customer to, okay, be an active partner in a technical or a, what you call it, way to working with the requirements, and maybe they don't have that in place. So this is some of the reasons why we have unclear requirements. Maybe what do we want then of our requirements as testers? And the word testable, I think I mentioned earlier. We have the tester's nightmare here. Just a brief example. So this is a requirement, and this is actually not a made-up requirement. The website should be fast. Okay, so we're talking about requirements. Yeah, good, and yeah, it's kind of testable, I think. Well, for we, you have anything?
No, I said how fast.
Yeah, exactly. So we have to. I think we have to tweak this requirement a bit. So okay, for who should it be fast? For the server? I mean, no, for the user maybe the website, and it should be experienced as fast. Okay, well, a bit better maybe, but well, we have some subjective matters here, non-testable or non-measurable maybe. So I think it's it needs a bit of more work. So how is it possible to test this requirement then? And how can you report to a stakeholder that you have met the requirement as a project in your team? So we will move on with our little requirement. So now we're starting to make some put some measures on it or put some numbers on it. So we talk about 1 second, for instance. So, but okay, what part? The entire website? No, maybe that is unreasonable. So we have maybe the main page should load in 1 second, and sub pages should load in 1.5 seconds. Okay, but well, this requirement start to grow a bit. So maybe we have to split it up into 2 separate requirements then, or a subset. So now we are coming to something that actually we haven't spent much time on this requirement, but it actually is a whole lot better than it was in the beginning. So is that good enough then? What do you think? Well, for someone it might be, for the depending on the product or the team or the thing we're developing. But well, I think that how many users are on the site at the same time? Do we have peak hours? Do we have campaigns, etc., etc.? So, yeah, we can go on with this quite a while, and we don't have that much time. I think I have 15 minutes left. That is not enough. So, what's the conclusion here then? Well, testers are a pain in the butt when they start to examine those requirements, and but I think that spend a couple of more minutes at least at each requirement will add some quality to it in the end. So we have a new requirement here then, and once again this is an actual requirement for an actual product that I have been working on once, and this is nice. Well, it's probably testable, I think. So this is for an application to play video. So just to raise a question, I don't know if anyone here works in have been working with test, but I think it would. Does anyone have a suggestion here for a test case, a really simple one? Well, I could make one up. On a sunny day, yes. Yeah, yeah. So without an umbrella, yeah. Already here you find a lot of, yeah. So you find a lot of holes in this requirements already. I could at least find two two test cases here to do, because I'm a bit ambitious, so I don't want to use one. So I want to see that the text can be read easily, and I want the contrast to be good. So this is going into the development then, and I get something to test on. So I get this one. Nice, I like it. So I bring out the test cases here, and I made my two test cases here. Start the movie, turn on subtitles, and verify that the text is easy to see. Sure. And the other one is that the contrast is good. Yeah, it's really good. It actually is. And I have two test cases. Both are passed. I have a 100% passed test cases and 100% passed requirement coverage. And now this is a really basic, crude example, but you get the point. So, as you mentioned over here, so who is the user actually? Is this old, young, disabilities, color blindness, placement, size, colors, distance to TV? Are you on the beach or not? Do you have your sunglasses or not? So yeah, it's a testable requirement, but you actually need to do a bit more thinking about this requirement. And also we have the part where testing becomes subjective and requirement interpretation becomes subjective to the individual tester. So what we have here is this is another tester, and he is actually colorblind, so that doesn't come out too well for him, and he thinks I can read it, but it's not good contrast. So he passed the test cases, and requirement coverage he knows nothing about, because it's one requirement but two test cases, and everything gets screwed up. Then management come running down with needing statistics, and that doesn't work. So we have to look at a couple of parameters here. So we have the testable part. Is it testable or not? We have an outcome that can be verified, and in traditional requirement management, for you who work with that, you have something called a fit criteria, which is actually for functional requirement. And you have a not scalable criteria, which is either true or false, and it doesn't indicate how to test something, just that it's a statement for the tester to ensure compliance that he can rely about. And that is something that, if you have a fit criteria, you actually can hope that the requirement is testable. Usually it is. And then we have something called measurable, because I brought that up a bit. And we have the word metrics. Metrics is something else. I put it a bit down, because metrics is usually something regarding the one with the test coverage or the requirement coverage. So testable and measurable, well, we can expand a bit into about that. When we talk about measurement, we also talk about quantification, and that was the part about adding, for instance, we have the 1 second parameter that could be quantified. Suddenly we could quantify a requirement, and this is something probably most of you have heard of if you work with software development. A guy called Tom Gilb, and he is also he likes to measure things in all kind of ways, and this is his definition of quantification and measurement. So according to him, quantification is actually using numbers to make something measurable, and the measurement itself is a process that we do when we test, for instance, to see where we are in the quantification scale. And there is also something called Gilb's law, has been called Gilb's law, that anything you need to quantify can be measured in some way that is superior to not measuring it at all. So if you want to measure, find a way to measure it. It's probably better than not measuring it. So everyone doesn't agree maybe on measuring things, but if you want testable requirements and measurable requirements, you'll probably have some kind of quantification to your requirements as well. Well, measurable and testable, but can we test it then? Now we have done requirements that are testable and they are measurable. So when the tester comes in here and he looks at the requirement specification or the requirement, it's a nice clear specific. It should handle 10,000 requests per second, and maybe we can argue on what time of day it is and so on, but keep it for this time being. Testable, I think so, yeah. Measurable, I think so, yeah. But how? So when it's time to test this, we actually don't know how to do it. We find out that to measure this, we need to have a specific tool. Then we probably we maybe start to find resources to evaluate or find a tool or create a tool, and suddenly the time just flies. Because it's measurable and it's testable, maybe we can't do the actual test. So what we have here is bringing testers in, or test knowledge in beginning, to see that we actually can do the testing that we want to do, even if the requirements are spot on, clean. So I will start to phase out here and have a couple of more examples, because examples are fun. These are also some examples of testable requirements. As a customer, I at least want to be able to write 27 characters in the search field. Well, I don't know even how to respond to that one. And as the provider, we want thumbnail icons and other images to have good quality. And once again, good quality. Who will judge what good quality is? And this you can also start arguing why. Why not less? Why not more? What's the specific requirement here? Why is this needed? So, to conclude, I've talked about the testable requirements. Make sure they're testable. What you get here in bonus is the test early part, where you actually come in and start looking at the requirements and see what can we do for activities later on. Take measurements and metrics, two different things, in consideration from the start. It's really tough when you start rolling out and start developing and start being asked about the how are you doing, how are the testing going, how many requirements have you covered, if you don't have this thought process in from the beginning. What to verify and how to verify it. What kind of testing will you do? And do you have the tools needed? Yeah, this I mentioned early in the beginning. There are a lot of stakeholders involved, there are a lot of people involved, and everyone usually don't have the same knowledge. The tester doesn't know anything about the business analysis part or the requirement part, and the stakeholders that want reports doesn't know anything about the requirements and stuff like that. So thinking through decent and good and testable and measurable requirements early will probably help enforcing this into your projects. And then finally, why? Yeah, that is a good question, but I think it's quite clear, and it's it's a no-brainer actually. One thing is this, and this is something that I have noticed many times. It's the unnecessary activities, the discussions and the questions about, okay, is this really supposed to work like this, or should it do like this? And it's not only from testers, because everyone will start to, as the product develops, and that is often I mean you want maybe an agile process, and you want things to evolve during the project, and everything can't be set from the start, but there will be a lot of questions that could be avoided if it's a bit more clear from the beginning. And an agreement throughout the team if what we're doing is correct. And what I mean is correct, that could be anything, but is it the right product we're doing? And then we come back to the quality part, and this is actually what I started out with with the test quote from Kem Kano, and going into what Tom Gilb also says about quality, because he's a lot about measuring quality in software development and how do you measure quality, and that is not easy, but that is the actually big part of the tester's job, and what Kem Kaner said, that we're actually there to help and investigate and help out to measure quality of the product, and if it's not measurable, it's probably really hard to say if the quality is good enough, and especially in the software domain. I mean, according to Tom Gilb, you have a lot of people to focus on quality as something he calls bug freeness. So if you have no bugs or minimal amount of bugs, then it's good quality. But quality is usually what the agile community talks about when they talk about the value to the stakeholders. What do they want, and how can that be measured? And when it all comes down to the final line, it's about money, of course. It's simple as that, because you don't want to spend too much money, you don't want to overdraw your budget, you want to deliver something that is good, that can help other gain money, and starting out with a good requirement process is probably a good way to start.